So, welcome everyone to our Spiritual Awakenings International meeting. We are absolutely delighted to have you here today. And I would like to say welcome in many languages because we are an international organization. So, bonjour, herzliche willkommen, buenos dias, buongiorno, bon dia. We do hope in the future to also have our website translated into many languages and possibly also have speakers that will be speaking to us in many languages. And Spiritual Awakenings International, thank you all of you for your support. We are absolutely blown away, we being the board of directors, at how Spiritual Awakenings International has blossomed and grown since we launched 6 weeks ago. We have over 420 subscribers from 20 countries around the world, which is phenomenal. People from every continent except Antarctica. So it just shows how spiritual awakenings are happening all over the world. So thank you everyone for your interest and support. And don't forget to tell your friends about Spiritual Awakenings International. Well, here at our meeting today, we have members of our board of directors, and I wanted to introduce them to you. I'm Dr. Yvonne Cason. I'm the president of Spiritual Awakenings International. Our speaker today will be Robert Baer. Robert, do you want to wave your hand? So Robert Baer, who is going to be our speaker today, is the vice president of Spiritual Awakenings International. And Linda, do you want to wave your hand? Linda Truex is the secretary of Spiritual Awakenings International. And then we have Diane Willis, if you want to raise your hand, Diane, to the crowd. Diane is also on the board and is the chair of the advisory board of Spiritual Awakenings International. So we're happy to have them here today. And we also have some members of our Circle of Honor here. Emma Bragdon, who you'll be meeting later on. She'd say, hi, Emma, there we go. And Diane Willis is also on the Circle of Honor, and who you met a minute ago. And I am also on the Circle of Honor. We may have a couple other Circle of Honor people joining us later on, but right now I think that's all that we have present. So the format of today's meeting is going to be as follows. As I mentioned, everyone's going to be muted. So to keep the background noise down, except for the speaker. And we will be using the chat function today for questions. So during Robert Baer's talk, if you have some questions that come up, just write them into the chat screen. And we will, at the end of the talk, we will start answering, Robert will start answering the questions in the order that they appear in the chat screen. Linda Truex, our secretary, will be the moderator of the question and answer portion. So our speaker will be introduced today by Emma Bragdon. We are absolutely delighted that she's the founder of the, oh dear, now I'm getting the name wrong, sorry, Emma. The Institute for Mental Health for You. Oh, Integrative Mental Health for You. Thank you. At least I finally got it right. I apologize. The founder and executive director of Integrative Mental Health for You, Dr. Emma Bragdon, will be introducing our speaker today, Robert Baer. And we're delighted that Integrative Mental Health for You was co-sponsoring today's event. So Emma, please go ahead and introduce our speaker today.
Well, you mentioned that I could say a few words about IMHU to begin with.
Yes.
I'd just like to say that we started because we believe that it's not a one-size-fits-all for mental health. In fact, we need to deal with each person uniquely. And so we believe that spirituality has huge positive potential for assisting people in terms of improving mental health. And in fact, in some ways, at some times, transforming mental health for the better. And as far as I'm concerned, everything I know about Robert Baer is that he is testimony to that, because he had a transformative experience, in fact, more than one. So it's a great pleasure for me to be able to introduce Robert. And I wanted to give a few words more formally about him. Robert Baer has a master's in public administration and the vice president and co-founder of Spiritual Awakenings International. Robert Baer is also the past vice president of IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. His education consists of a bachelor's degree and master's degree, both in public administration from the University of San Francisco, and he has acquired 2 teaching credentials and several other certifications from his professional career. Robert is an international business consultant, former city manager, and adjunct professor, and is an award-winning grant writer. Robert is also a retired police officer of 22 years who served on the Santa Cruz Police Department and on the California Highway Patrol. Robert shared the story of his 2 near-death experiences on the TV show I Survived Beyond and Back, and he was a featured case study in Deborah Diamond's book, Life After Near Death. Robert was also interviewed for an upcoming episode on William Shatner's show, Unexplained, on the History Channel. Robert Baer is a multiple near-death experiencer and has had multiple spiritually transformative experiences. He's won awards for his hobby of photography, and he currently lives in South Beach, Oregon. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Just a couple of things before I get started in my near-death experience. I am Robert Baer, and I wanted to acknowledge this book because Deborah Diamond is in the audience right now.
We can't see it.
Can you see it? Can you see
Now
it?
we can see it. Mhm.
Yes. Life After Near Death. Thank you for featuring me in the book. It's a good read. Just putting a plug in for her. But my name is Robert Baer. I was born March 21st, 1948 in Santa Cruz, California. And I died on March 22nd, 2009 in Phoenix, Arizona. It was quite an experience for what I went through, and sometimes it's hard for me to express it because it's so emotional for me. It still is to this day. But the background is, I was a California Highway Patrolman and a Santa Cruz Police Department officer for almost 23 years, and I did retire from the California Highway Patrol, and I worked in South Los Angeles, Watts, East Los Angeles, San Francisco twice, Oakland twice, and my hometown of Santa Cruz twice. And it was a great career. A lot of the things I'm going to be talking about today have to do with that aspect of my life. But there's a few other things that I've been an adjunct professor, a city manager, like Emma had mentioned, and I've done a variety of things, which includes being an international business consultant. I've traveled all over the world. I've been truly blessed. But nothing is more blessed than having passed away, and now I had 4,164 extra days of life after being revived. And when I passed away, it was about the same time that Michael Jackson, the rock star, passed away. And they took him to University of California, LA hospital, and tried to revive him. He'd been deceased about 45 minutes. And they took him there to tried to be revived by a doctor that was renowned in doing that. He couldn't revive him, but I was deceased about the same amount of time, in fact, maybe even longer. And I was able to be revived by a doctor that he was wonderful. He wouldn't let me die. So when I think about Michael Jackson, I just think what he would have given to have had an additional 4,164 days of life. It's truly a blessing. And I was, in 2008, I was at home, and I received a call from a friend of mine, someone that I'd been a policeman with. And he was the type of friend that when you talked to him, it was like no time had passed. And we had been friends since the 60s because we were both policemen during that time period. In fact, it was in Santa Cruz. And he called me and we started to talk, and he said, "Robert, I feel compelled to ask you a question." And I said, "What's your question?" And he says, "I just wanted to know if you're right with the Lord." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I just feel like I'm supposed to ask you that." And I said, I think so. And we just continued talking about other things and catching up on where some of our friends were and what they were doing in their lives. And I didn't think much more than that. But I went and had a full physical where with the treadmill and all the blood tests and all the work. And I passed it with flying colors. No problem with anything. And I just didn't think about my conversation with my friend, but he passed away. He died. And I drove down to California. I said a few words when it came to his, we had a celebration of life for him. And it was kind of like a eulogy. I talked about knowing him all those years. And it was really it was ironic that he was talking to me about passing and he did. Short time later, I was at home and I was asleep, and all of a sudden I woke up, and at the foot of my bed was my mother. My mother had passed in 2005. And she was at the foot of my bed, and I don't know what language we conversed with. Maybe it was just telepathically, but she told me to get my affairs in order, that I was going to die. And I didn't know whether it was a dream. I didn't know what it was. But when she left, I was in just a pool of sweat. I couldn't sleep anymore. And I got to thinking about it and thought, well, I just had this physical, so it must have been a nightmare or something, or a dream. But I love seeing my mother, and she was beautiful. She looked like she did when I was a young boy. Just absolutely beautiful. And it was really good to see her. And I didn't think much more about it. But then a short time later, I was in bed again. And all of a sudden, at the foot of my bed was my friend that had passed away, the one who asked me if I had my affairs in order, if I was right with the Lord. He was at the foot of my bed. And the same thing, we were conversing. And he made a statement to me, "I'm going to bring you through the light." And I said, "What?" He said, "I'm going to bring you through the light." And then he said he had to go because he wanted to go visit his grandkids in Sacramento. Well, the same thing happened again. I woke up in a pool of sweat. I mean, it was unbelievable. I started to make some calls, and I found out, because I didn't know, his grandkids did live in Sacramento. So I verified that. But every year my son was a high school teacher, a football coach, baseball coach, basketball coach down in Phoenix, Arizona. And every year we would, during his spring break time, I would go down there and we would go to spring training baseball games. And I get to visit with my granddaughters, take them to the ball games. And I'm a big Giants fan and a Chicago Cubs fan. And so we would go to a lot of the Cubs games and the Giants games and even the Oakland A's games. And when I went down there in 2009, it was really hot. It was extremely hot. Like it was it was almost triple digits, or it may have been triple digits. And when you live in a coastal area like I do, you're used to a real cool climate. And whenever I went to a hot environment, it was very uncomfortable for me. So when I was down in Arizona, I didn't feel right, but I figured, well, it's just the adjustment to the heat. And then I had a full physical, so having something wrong with me, it didn't even occur to me. So that whole week I felt terrible. And when it came time to leave, I thought, I love seeing my son and his family and my granddaughters, but I wanted to get home to a cooler climate in Oregon. So he dropped me off at the airport. We said our goodbyes, and I came in the terminal and I looked at the TSA line. It was just long. It was horrible. I thought, oh, how am I going to do this? I don't feel good. I just started feeling terrible. And I made it to the TSA line, and then I went to a little, like a mini market that's in the airport. And I thought, I'm going to get some aspirins. So I bought some aspirins. It's probably a good thing that I did. Took the aspirins, and then I went to the gate and waited to board. I just kept feeling worse and worse and worse. I thought, no, I can hardly wait to get to Oregon. We were boarding the airplane, and I was putting stuff in the overhead bin, and I dropped dead of a massive heart attack in the airplane. Luckily, it hadn't taken off. And fortunately, there were two firemen who had been there for spring training also to see spring training games. They were from the state of Washington. They started to give me CPR, and there was a defibrillator on the plane. They knew how to work it. I don't remember any of that. Nothing to do with that. Because I was gravitating up into this beautiful light. And there were people with me. There was somebody was with me. There was actually more than one. I actually don't know who it was, but I'd like to think it was my friend who told me that he was going to bring me through the light, because he's the type of guy that would keep his word. So as I'm going up into this light, it was one of the most profound feelings you could ever imagine. It was like nothing else mattered. It was warm. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. And I was looking at all the different colors, which I had never seen. These colors. They don't exist in this world. They're different types of colors. And it was absolutely phenomenal. And I finally ended up in the presence of a higher power. And it was humbling. I could not look at the higher power. I could not. There were souls all around me. And I was asked a question. And I don't know what language, I don't know how it was asked, but I understood it. And it had to do with, what good have I done in my life? And the next thing I know, a life review started. And it was a reckoning for me. When you've had a lot of power like I had, as a policeman or as a city administrator or general manager, even as a professor where you grade people and you judge people, you don't really know the full effect you have on people's lives. But I found out. And the life review started from the day I was born. And there was a part that I didn't quite understand, but at the very beginning, I saw my mother and father in front of an old car. And I was listening to them talk. And then it just kind of evolved from that point on. And every year of my life, I want to say this because when I came back to life, I was lucky enough to have my father still be alive. He died when he was 97 years old. But I remember telling him about this, seeing this, him and my mother in front of this old car. He produced a photo, and that was the exact image that I saw. He said, "That's the day your mother and I found out she was pregnant with you."
Mm.
They took a picture because they were both happy.
Mm.
And my dad was never emotional, but the tears were just rolling down his eyes and down his cheeks rather. And my life review just kind of evolved from there. I was really close with my grandmothers. They were wonderful persons. They were both, of course, different. One was a lady that was just classy. Well, they were both classy. But I had a stuttering problem when I was younger, and she took it on herself to work with me on my stuttering problem. And I would spend some time with her, and she was so special to me. We would listen to the radio. That's before television. We would listen to the radio, and then I'd go to bed, sleep in the bed with her. And I remember hearing her snore, and during my life review, I heard her snore again. And I used to ask her all the time about Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, because she had seen that as a little girl. And every time I'd ask her, well, she'd say, "Robert, I just told you about this 10 minutes ago." But she would continue to tell me. She was such a kind person and a very spiritual person. And by the way, she collected all types of elephants and stuff, like figurines. And believe it or not, I do that too. I collect elephant stuff. I think I got that from her. But I saw her in the Christmas of 1954, which was her last Christmas. And it was at my parents' house, and there were so many people there. And my father and mother had given her a Kodak Instamatic camera, or Brownie Instamatic camera. I don't know if you remember those, where you put the film in and you had to wind the film in. And my father was trying to tell her how to do that. And she says, "I don't want to do that. It's too complicated. I don't want it." And I think of that a lot because I'm that way with my cell phone. I don't want to learn all the stuff on it. And then my granddaughters push it on me. And when they come visit me, the next thing I know, I get my phone and I have all these applications on it and stuff. I have no idea how to use them. But I saw that, and it was so good to see her. And then it was sad, but it was good. And my other grandmother, she had cataracts really bad, and she was almost blind. And my parents built a home behind our home, and like a grandmother's quarters, and moved her up, or moved her down, because she lived in Berkeley and we lived in the San Jose, Santa Cruz area, or Los Gatos, Santa Cruz area. And we used to take care of her, take turns taking care of her. We had different chores. Mine was, I read the Bible to her every day. And I did all the shopping for her and did stuff like that. And it was really good to see her. she was really special. And she's the one who probably had a big bearing on my spirituality. And I acknowledge that. But when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my parents used to go to San Jose and we would go shopping on Saturdays. And we had this station wagon and everybody just be kind of running around this station wagon. This before they had seat belts and stuff. And we would go in and go shopping. And I was in the store with my family, and I asked my father, I saw some baseball cards, a pack of baseball cards, and asked my father, I said, can I have those baseball cards? And he says, ask your mother. Well, when you asked my mother, it was an automatic no usually. So I asked her and she said no. So anyways, I stole those cards. And we got home and I was off in my bedroom and I opened the baseball cards and I just sticking this little stick of chewing gum in my mouth. And my mother came in the room and she says, Robert, where'd you get those cards? Where'd you get that? And then she just told me, she says, that's it. So she went and got my father. They loaded me up in the car, took me back to the store with the baseball cards, and they made me apologize to the store owner. And of course, my dad gave him the nickel for the cards, and my mother was saying, you know, do what you want with them. Call the police, do whatever. And you know, it was the store owner was saying, I don't want to call the police. He's just a young kid. He made a mistake, but that incident had a profound effect on my life. It really did. And as I was relating this to my father, after I'd had my near-death experience, I told my dad, I said, you guys did your job. You did your job as parents. And I thanked him for it. And just little things like that. I mean, I experienced stuff like that. I got to live my life over again, my paper route, playing sports. And the ironic thing is I made the high school baseball team as a freshman. I was a pretty good ball player when I was younger. Made it as a freshman. And there were a couple of seniors on the team that I don't know if they were jealous or what, but I was in the shower after practice one time and there was a locker room, a boys' locker room, swimming pool, and a girls' locker room. So the swimming pools separated everything, but it was in the spring, so the girls were having their swimming team practice in the pool area. Well, I was in the shower, and one of the seniors who was he was a bully, grabbed me and they took me and they threw me out into the area of the swimming pool. I had no clothes on, and everybody was laughing. And the coach came over and gave me a towel, and I went back inside. And I'm bringing this up because one of the last thing I did as a California Highway Patrolman, I was a watch commander, shift supervisor. This was in around 1990, 89, 90. And it was like 2:30 in the morning. I decided to get out and take a ride. I didn't want to stay in the office. And I was going down the road and I see this car going serpentine. So I thought, oh, got a drunk driver, DUI. So I pulled the car over, and they didn't want the watch commanders or the shift supervisors to be tied up with an arrest or anything. So I called an adjacent beat unit to come out to take care of it. But I walked up to the car and started to talk to the guy. He gave me his driver's license, And all of a sudden I realized this is the guy that threw me out into the swimming pool area. And I thought, well, well, well. So I never said anything. He kept telling me I looked familiar, but I just told the beat unit, I'm going to take care of this one myself. And I took him to jail. And it was, he was a bully, but I saw him cry. He started crying and going on. And I just thought to myself, I can't believe what's happening, but it happened. But anyways, my life evolved, and I saw myself with, like I said, my paper route, playing sports. And I have this affinity for cars. I love cars, and I just like cars and speed. And I had a few problems when I was younger, mostly with burning rubber and reckless driving and stuff like that. And I acknowledge it. I just like that. And there was a young lady that liked me quite a bit, and I'd gone out with her a couple times because it was required for my sister to go on a date. I had to go on a double date with her, or else she couldn't go out. That's just the way my mother had laid down the rules. So reluctantly, I would go out, but I always would go out with this gal, and she got a hold of me and said that she wanted me to go to dance at the Coconut Grove with her, which is in Santa Cruz. And I said, no, I'm going to go. I have other plans. And she got all upset, and she says, what's your other plans? And I says, I'm actually going to go cruising with my friends on Beach Street. It's Saturday night. And she got all upset, left, and she came back and gave me this letter. She gave me this letter that in a sealed envelope. And I had the letter, and that night she went out with a couple of other persons, and they got in a crash on Graham Hill Road, and 3 people died in the crash, and she was one of them. And it was really sad. But what's ironic is that when I worked for the California Highway Patrol, I actually worked with the officer that worked that crash. So I found out all about it later on. But as I was looking at this part of my life review, I heard someone say, "You never opened my letter." I knew who it was. And the one thing about my life review, I saw myself, but I could also see everybody else. I got to experience what I felt all over again, but I got to experience how they perceived me and how they felt. And it was terrible for me. I still have that letter, by the way. That happened. And I ended up becoming a policeman, and I saw incident after incident which involved my work. There was one incident where I was down in Watts, and when I was working down in Watts, it wasn't unusual. This was right after the riots. So it was kind of like the way it is now, a lot of hatred towards police. And when I was younger, I had a full head of blonde hair and blue eyes. And when you're working down in Watts, you were kind of out of place a little bit. but we would make stops, traffic stops, and they would take you into the alleys usually, and the projects were 2 or 3 stories tall, high, and then you'd be out making a traffic stop or writing a ticket, and the next thing you know, you look up, there'd be a couple of rifles pointing at you. It was intimidating, and it was not a good place to be at that time. And one night I was with, in fact, that was when they started to double up the officers. Instead of going solo, they put two in a car, and they wanted you in a car, and because it was those were really trying times. So we were making an arrest. My partner and I were making an arrest one night, and we heard a bunch of gunshots go off, and it actually got to the point where, kind of like the sound of gunfire, it happened a lot. So, but this seemed like it was really close. So I happened to look, and there was somebody running at me with a rifle. And I yelled just to this guy to halt, but he just kept right on coming. And instinctively, I don't know what made me not do it, but I would have been justified probably to do more than I did. But he came right up to me, and he said that he had just been robbed. He saw us, and he came to, said he fired off some warning shots, and he came to see if we could help him. And when I saw that part of my life review, I heard a voice say, "Thanks for not shooting me." I actually heard that. I believe that was that gentleman. And this just kept going. Incident after incident after incident. My time in the South LA Watts area, my time in San Francisco, my time in when I was in the Oakland, back home in Santa Cruz, East Los Angeles, which was a really rough area to work. I kept seeing myself in incident after incident, and I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like what I'd become. I'd become really calloused. And by the book, black and white, that's how I looked at life. And it just kept going on and on and on. And I kept seeing myself thinking, oh, you could feel the people, you could feel the way they thought about you. And I did have a friend that was a hemophilia person. I think they call them they're bleeders or whatever. I don't know what the exact term is, but he couldn't play with us. He was my neighbor. He couldn't play sports with us or anything because they were afraid that that he would get hurt and need a transfusion or whatever, get cut or whatever. So I used to go over and I'd play board games with him, especially when it was raining. It was kind of fun. So, and his mother would make us Kool-Aid. And she had a little pack of cherry Kool-Aid for me. That was my favorite. So I watched this. I watched her make cherry Kool-Aid for me. And she put exactly 2 tablespoons of sugar in there, stirred it around and gave it to me. And I could taste the Kool-Aid. And when I was looking at that, I heard a voice say, "You were my best friend." And here again, I was telling my father about this. And my dad said, this was my friend Paul. My father goes, Paul's dad came by about 10 years ago, stopped by to see me when he found out your mother had passed. And he told me that Paul had died around 1985 or so. He'd had a blood transfusion and he caught AIDS and died from it. And I told him, I think that was him that talked during my life review. And one thing about it, I have verified or validated a lot of the things that I saw with those people that are still alive. And my dad was a big plus for me in that. I stopped somebody for speeding in Santa Cruz, and I walked up to the car, asked the guy for his driver's license, and it was a doctor. I looked at the name and I said, "Did you work at the Sisters Hospital?" And he goes, "Yes, I did. I still do." I said, "Do you remember Jeannie Fair?" He goes, "Yeah, I think I do remember her. Yeah." I said, "That's my mother." He goes, "Really?" And I said, "You delivered me." He goes, "Are you kidding me?" Because I said, "Look, this is for my mother." I gave him his driver's license back. And I said, "That's for my mom." He told his son was an attorney, and they got a hold of me. And my mom was so proud of me because I had let her down at a lot of things in my life, which I'm not going to talk about. But when she found out I'd stopped the doctor and did that, she was really happy at the time. And I'm glad I did it too. But anyways, getting back to my life review, anybody that's been through a divorce or been through some horrible experience that may have betrayal involved, that is the hardest thing I've had to deal with since I've been brought back to life. Because I see people that I know have betrayed me. And if anybody's had a ex-spouse or whatever, that could be the case for a lot of you. It surely was the case for me. I knew everything. And it was very uncomfortable. You can forgive, and I do forgive, but I have a really hard time forgetting it because I knew what was happening, and I actually have validated some of the things that I saw in my life review, which have to do with betrayal, and they were validated to the point that the person said, "How did you know that?" And I explained to him what had happened. All my life was laid out. And I couldn't look at the higher power. It was so humbling. It still bothers me to think about it. I couldn't do it. But I noticed something fidgeting off in the right. And I looked over, and my dog, Scooter, had died in 2001. And I'd had cattle, and she was a border collie. And we were inseparable. She actually lived in my Ford pickup, basically. I mean, she went everywhere with me. And she did a lot of my work for me. She would round the cattle up, and she was a great friend. But I noticed some fidgeting. I looked over, and there was Scooter. I saw her. It was so good to see her. And I thought to myself, I did not know, I would have never believed the animals would be where I was. she was really happy to see me, but she couldn't come to me. Could not come to me. So had the life review. It led all the way up to my heart attack. Some great times. I met a lady down in Southern California that I really liked. It was one of the best days of my life. Got to relive that. Also got to relive having my heart broken by her. I mean, I went through the whole gambit, and that's okay. I mean, birth of my children, watching them in the different stages. But I still was not happy with what I saw about myself personally. And all of a sudden, I don't know what triggered it. I ended up back in my body in the emergency room of the hospital in Phoenix. And at the time, actually up until the time that I was in Philadelphia about a year ago, when Dr. Yvonne Cason asked me to be on a panel for multiple near-death experiencers, I did not know that that was kind of a unique thing where someone had had more than one experience. But it did happen to me. And I had been revived. But then I died again. And I was dead for about 10 minutes the second time. But it was a totally different experience. This one, I was on top of where my body was, watching everybody work on me. And everybody was going helter-skelter. I was watching that, but my attention was drawn to another part of the hospital where there were a couple people going through my wallet, trying to find my insurance cards. And my attention went to where they were. And I was watching them go through my wallet, and I was trying to tell them where the insurance cards were because I had them in a special place. And as I was trying to tell them, I thought, they can't hear me. I'm dead. It's the reality. And they revived me again. And I was in intensive care for several days, had all these machines strapped up to me. And the doctor would come in quite a bit. And I was telling him about seeing this thing in the hospital room, about them going through my wallet. And he goes, wait a minute. So he went and got the people, brought him into the room, and he says, you tell them what you saw. And I did. And they said, that's exactly what happened. So that validated that. What I am saying to me is no different than maybe what Marco Polo saw, maybe what Christopher Columbus went through, or even Mark Twain, who's one of my heroes. I love that guy. Where I went and where others have been that have passed and come back to life, there's no video cameras. There's no cameras. There's nothing. It's just my account of what I remember. It's no different than having Marco Polo or Christopher Columbus meet and talk to the Queen and all of her people involved in her life, tell them about what they saw. I'm no different. I'm telling you the same thing. It's actually the same scenario. And like Mark Twain would go to India and he'd come back to San Francisco, and he would book a hall, and maybe the first few times he would give a talk, there'd be a half dozen people there. Next thing you know, the place was packed. But he didn't have pictures. It was just what he saw. That's the same thing I'm doing with everybody here. All I can do is tell you what I saw. And from the bottom of my heart, this is the best I can do. I recommend that everybody get on YouTube. Actually, if you stay on Spiritual Awakenings International, you're going to find that we're probably going to bring a group of speakers that will probably cover all the gambits for all the STEs that there are. That's what we're trying to do, trying to bring everybody together. But that's all I can do is just tell you what I saw. And it's just very, very humbling to go through what I've gone through. And I've thought about writing a book. And actually, Dr. Kason's been nipping at my heels to do it. And probably I will do it now. But I thought I figured out how I'm going to start the book. And when I was in Phoenix, all I wanted to do was get home to Oregon. My children had came and they saw me, and that's one of the things that I died instantly, and I felt really, it kind of upset me because I always thought when I passed, I would be able to thank the Lord for the wonderful life I was given. And I didn't have an opportunity to do that. And so I have another chance. But when my kids came to see me, I thought, well, whatever happens, happens. And I told the doctor, I like to go home. I don't really care what, I meant it. And he says, well, you're going to need another surgery. And so he arranged to have someone in Eugene, Oregon, was a colleague that he knew, perform it. So I got to fly back to Oregon, went right in to have the surgery. And after I had my surgery in Eugene, I was in a room, I guess they call it a recovery room, and it was raining sideways outside. I could hear the rain hitting the window, and the wind was blowing, and I was kind of woozy, and I was laying down, and all of a sudden I looked over, and there was this old nun next to me. And I looked at her, and I thought to myself, am I dead? And I looked at her, and I said, are you real? And she goes, of course I'm real. And I said, what are you doing here? And she says, I was just praying for you. And I said, well, thank you. And she said, how are you feeling? And I said, you know, I'm fine, I think. And she sat there for a while, and then she goes, I have a favor to ask you. And I said, what's that? And she said, I spent my whole life being a nun. And do you remember anything that happened to you when you passed? And I said, I do. She said, I need to know. Can you tell me what you remember? And I told her, can you come back when when I'm not so groggy? And she goes, of course. So she came back. And we were in the room together. And she's one of two persons I've told everything to. And that's how I'm going to start my book. Being in the recovery room, telling my story of my experience to the nun, and laying out all the things that happen. And the one thing that caught her attention, there was a situation in Santa Cruz where as the shift supervisor or watch commander, I was called out to a remote area because there had been what we were told an accident where a car had gone over the embankment, hit a tree and caught on fire. And somebody was in there and was deceased. So I got up to the scene and I was going to take pictures and do stuff like that. And the person that had been deceased after the fire was put out was laying in the front seat with his arms like this, but laying across the seat. And I said, this isn't a traffic accident. And we started to look, and I said, I'm going to call the sheriff's department. So the sheriff's department came out there. And of course, when you're involved in law enforcement, you learn about jurisdictions and who's responsible for what type of incidences and vice versa. And myself and the person involved with the sheriff's department, we had a frank discussion. And he said, no, this is a traffic accident. So I said, fine. So we took it. And I had the unfortunate experience of having to go at times tell people that their loved ones had passed away. And I went to this place where the young man had lived. And as I drove up, and this was like at 3, 4 in the morning, I parked the car, and as I came up, I automatically heard this woman start screaming. And it was terrible. I knocked on the door, and she opened the door, and it was the young man's mother. And when I saw this part of my life review, I heard a voice say, "Thank you for being so nice to my mother." They did an autopsy on the young man, and there was a slug in his chest. He'd been shot. So my intuition was correct. It ended up being a murder. And I wanted to talk about intuition because I probably always had it my whole life. It's like a sixth sense. I used it a lot in my job. I think it helped me survive some of the areas that I worked. But after I passed, it just got stronger and stronger. And they did some unusual things happened to me physically. After I was revived and went through this long recovery, I lost the use of my 2 fingers on each hand. I have to like peck when I type now. And I do have a hard time reading a book. I don't have the, I can't focus that long when I have to sit down and read a book. I can read a computer, but I have a hard time focusing. But I have this affinity for light and colors. And one of the things that I've been blessed with is I can feel it coming on where I just know it's going to happen. It's usually at night. It's usually when I'm alone and it's still. And I'm a bachelor, so I live by myself, so it's no problem. I mean, I'll get something to drink, glass of juice or something, and I'll just sit in a chair and it's dark and I can see all the colors that I saw before. It's phenomenal. And I'm so grateful that I can do that periodically. Um, I can always tell when it's going to happen. And the other thing that's happened is I used to have like 20/70 or 20/90 vision. Since I've had my NDE, it's at 20/10, and they can't figure out how that happened. But I'm grateful for it, and I think I'm very thankful for it. It's still 20/10, but I have other things happen where, like, I set off microwaves, alarms in stores. I can't go through a TSA line without having to go through one of those inspections, and that's okay. I'm still vertical. I live every day like it's my last day. And if anything should come out of my talk with you, I just hope everybody appreciates their life. And whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's your life. You have to live it. And it's a wonderful thing to have. And the other thing is kind of spooky. I've required something like I become a medium. And I've chose not to develop those skills. I'm not ready for it. And at my age, why be ready for it? I mean, I'm in my 70s, so I mean, I'm at the end of the line. Why would I want to develop those types of skills? But I have that happen all the time, and I don't think I've ever not been accurate with what I've experienced. And I think probably there's a few people that are in this audience that probably know that's the case. I think Dr. Kason's one of them. I just have this strong, they come to me. But I've learned not to develop them, and I've learned not to say much. I made a big mistake when it first happened. I talk about this periodically, but I was in Walmart, and I was in a line during a checkout, and I was between a few people, and this lady was putting all of her stuff up, and I kept hearing this Chinese Dragon Red, Chinese Dragon Red. I thought, what is that all about? So all of a sudden, I don't know why I did this. I asked this lady, I said, did you just paint a wall in your house Chinese Dragon Red? And she goes, yes, I did. And then she says, who are you? And I said, I just asked. And it was a mistake because everybody followed me out to, not everybody, several people followed me out to my car and wanted to know. And I said, look, I said, I had a flash. And I said, I'm sorry I said it. I didn't mean to upset you. And I have these things happen all the time. And it's not unusual for me to be at home. And there's another thing that happens to me. I'm not alone. And it's just, I just have chosen not to develop or go there. I have all I can handle right now. And, but here again, all I can tell you is what I experienced. It's up to you whether you want to believe it or not. I just feel compelled to talk, and I've been glad I've had the form of doing this. I was on that TV show, I Survived Beyond and Back. That has opened up a lot for me where, and I reluctantly went on that show, but there aren't many people that have been dead for 45 minutes and came back, or even 10 minutes like I did the second time and came back. And I know after the show aired, I had no idea it was airing. I was going down I-5 in California. I was driving to go to see my son in Arizona and take him a car that I had. And I pulled into a truck stop to get fuel, and I had to use the restroom. And I walked down the hall, and I noticed some people staring at me. But I went into the restroom and I was doing my business, and this big guy comes in and he goes, "You're the guy that's on the TV show." And I said, "What TV show?" And he goes, "We watched you last night. I Survived Beyond and Back." I said, "Really?" I honestly didn't know. And so he said, "Would you mind talking to us for a few minutes?" And I says, "Well, let me take care of what I have to do here. And yeah, and I'll be there to talk to you." So I came in and I talked to them, and I realized people were looking for something. This is a topic that has generated interest from all different types of groups, all different nations. That's why SAI in 1 month is in 20 countries, 6 continents, and we're growing by leaps and bounds. That same trip I was down, and I went through Los Angeles, and I know my cardiologist would hate it, but I saw an In-N-Out burger, and we didn't have any in Oregon. And I thought, I got to have one of those. I pulled in In-N-Out, and I saw a couple police cars there. So I pulled in there, and I was standing in line. I noticed some policemen in the corner. One of them came up and she goes, "You're the retired policeman that was on the TV show, aren't you?" And I said, "That's the rumor." And she starts laughing and she says, "Could you come and would you like to join us?" And I said, "Sure." So I sat and talked to them. They were looking for something different than traditional religion. This all fits in. It all makes sense. But here again, I tell everybody, all I can do is tell you what I experienced. It's up to you whether you want to believe it or not. If I were you, I would go and I would look at YouTube and maybe listen to Dr. Kaysan. Maybe listen to Deborah Diamond, to different persons that have their own accounts of what happened, and formulate your own judgment. But it's here, and people want it, and that's why I'm doing this right now. It's an honor to be talking to you all. And I hope that you'll enjoy Spiritual Awakenings International. It's been my profound honor to be a co-founder and be involved with Dr. Kaysan, Linda Truex, Diane Willis, Nicole Gruhl. We've put so much work and effort into this, and we hope you like our product. Emma Bragdon, thank you so much for introducing me. We're going to have a series of speakers that I think will pique everybody's interest. And the way it's growing, I know we exceeded our capacity. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here and taking part in this. But we're only going to get better. So I'm going to leave it at this, turn it back over to Dr. Kaysan for a few moments. And I believe we're going to have or Linda for a few moments. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Robert. We do have about 10 questions, but I wanted to hit a point that you were discussing about not being able to show us a photograph of what happened in your life review. But when you gave us your after effects, to me, that's as good as a photograph. That's the proof of things that you are in an extraordinary realm. All right, so I'm going to go through the questions. The first one we had is from Sarah. Is there forgiveness during a life review or near-death experience? How do you make things right?
That's a great question. Is there forgiveness? I believe there is. I know when I came back to life, I am obsessed with only doing good. My whole life has changed. I mean, I'm writing grants. I'm doing stuff for putting together grants for like Food Share and helping people. I was president of a humane society, for example. It was a no-kill. It was a great experience. I have chosen to only do good. And if I hurt anybody, if I've seen something in my life review, or if I experience something that's uncomfortable, or that I feel I owe an apology to someone, I've actually done that. I'm not the same person that I was. My children would tell you I'm totally different, and they actually like me better now. But it's just that's what I want to do right now. I hope I'm forgiven. I think so. But if I have to go through another life review again, I don't know if it starts from day one all over again. Maybe it'll start from the time I died before until I die again. But whatever it is, I'm going to have to go through it. I know one thing. I used to be a guy that I've had BMW. I've had a lot of nice things in my life. Those things don't. I have a different perspective on life now, and so that's the best I can answer that question. Thank you for it. Hope that answered it.
Okay, the next one is a little different. This is from Pallavi. Is a memory ever forgotten? Is there a time when a memory has served its purpose and is dropped forever?
From my own personal experience, I don't believe that's the case. I believe you are what you've lived. And that's actually, I'm very grateful to have my memory. I owe a lot to those two firemen. I mean, they basically saved my life. The doctor did too, but the firemen, they kept that oxygen going in me. And I'll never think that it wasn't because of their efforts that I still have my memory, and I still have, but I think it stays with you. And here again, I only want to make good ones now.
All right.
Next.
Third question from Guinevere. Did you ever open the letter? And there was a follow-on from Marianne. I'd love to know what the letter said.
I have the letter. And I'm going to tell you, I've been contacted by a producer of a TV show that wanted to actually feature this as a segment and have me open the letter. I can't do that to the memory of that young lady. That was personal between her and I. Have I ever opened it? I haven't, but I know what's in there. I read her mind already in my life review, but I have it. And maybe that sounds kind of cold and calloused, but I already know what's in it. And, you know, I caused her a lot of grief on the last day of her life. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to be subjected to being on a show, for example, and have it like Geraldo opening Al Capone's safe. I mean, that's not going to happen. That's just, that's personal. And, but I know what's in there.
Okay,
Thanks for the
thank
question.
you. Our next question is from Vicky. Did you see how prayers, yours or others, affect people during your life review?
I'm going to say that I believe in prayer, and I believe that personally, no, I don't recall that. I've prayed a lot for things that I'm glad that those prayers weren't answered, because it would have been terrible on my for me. So, but that's the best I can answer that. But I believe in prayer, and I do every day. I have for years. So keep praying.
Okay, thank you. Next one again is from Pallavi. Do you have an idea about how serendipity happens? It seems like a mystery to me, and I'd love to know if you have any insights about it.
No, I don't. It's a good question. I don't.
So as we share these accounts of spiritually transformative experiences, sometimes we remind others of what direction to take during events in life. And we did have a comment from Rudy, and he mentioned to everybody, I have a half brother in prison. I don't know him, but he wrote me a letter a few weeks ago. I still have not written back. I just don't know what to say, but I need to write back. Sometimes we motivate others or give each other direction when we don't realize we're even asking for it. Okay, next one is from Deborah.
Hold on.
Did you want to comment?
Yes. I actually have had that personally happen in my life, where a family member's been in prison. And I actually went to a visitation day and spent some time talking to this person and established what I thought was a good rapport. And if there's any thoughts about possibly doing this with his half brother, I hope he would think about it. And a good face-to-face visitation where you bring something like gifts, like I brought jerky and a few other things. It was a good experience for both of us. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, that's good guidance. Another question from Deborah. How has this changed your view of life, relationships, etc.? How's your life outlook changed?
I think I'm more sensitive towards people and their what they're experiencing in life. I can tell you, I wrote some grants that were funded for food share, and with this COVID-19 situation, I spend usually 4 days a month, at least 4 days a month, helping distribute the food. And there was a young lady that came up to the counter, and I fixed her a really nice packet. She had 3 little kids with her, and it was actually raining. It was in Oregon, it was raining. So I said, you need some help getting this stuff out? And she goes, yes, I do. So I said, well, go out in your car and get your kids in, and I'll bring the box. And I went out there and opened the car door, and there's all this stuff in the car. And I asked her, I said, you live in your car? And she started to cry. She goes, yes. And she said she lost her job, lost a place. I said, oh my goodness. So anyways, I went inside and got some more things for her and put her in touch with somebody that could help her find some. She had three little kids. Her husband had left her and just took off. And I'm really sensitive to people in their plight now, and even animals. Like I mentioned, the Humane Society, and we would take animals that, like, people were dying of cancer, and they were all worried about what would happen to their animals when they died. And there was one little dog that we had that was blind, and the woman, this deceased woman, her relatives didn't want it, so I said, we'll take it. And I ended up taking the little dog for a couple of years before she died. But I just, because I saw my dog in the afterlife, it just, life is precious. It really is. So I do everything I can to help, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm sure everybody here isn't perfect, but at least you try and you do the best you can. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking it.
Thanks, Robert. Mary Ann, I think that was pretty much an answer to your question too, how the NDE changed your life. So I want to go into Amy's question, which is a little bit different. Post the experience, when you experience your own or others' anger, frustration, fear, hurt, resentment, despair, the so-called negative emotions, how do you deal with it to not hurt others by criticizing them or also not stifling your own emotions? In other words, how do you deal with these emotions constructively?
I've probably been trained really well as a policeman to not be emotional. That's just that's part of your training, and been trained to not lose your temper. And because once you lose your temper, everything just kind of deteriorates after that. So I try never to do that. But I just try to be consistent. Try to put myself in somebody else's shoes, and if there's a way to help, I'll do it. If there's maybe a way that I think I can help, I'll try and I may have to put them in touch with somebody else that may be able to address their problem. And it's basically a case-by-case thing, but that's the best I can answer that. Thank you.
Okay. Next one's from Deborah. Do you know if we reincarnate? Please share anything you're aware of regarding reincarnation.
Well, my mother was Catholic, and I was heavily influenced along those lines. I never believed in it until I had my NDE. And I've had some personal experiences which I believe have something to do with reincarnation. And I am wide open to that right now. And I know Dr. Cason and I have had several discussions about this. And I've had discussions with several other friends and colleagues, and I'm wide open to that right now. And do I think it? I do. I do believe in it. That's evolved.
Hey, we're all open for change. All right. This is from Marina. When you had your life review, how long did it seem to take? Why do you think your entire experience contained a life review? And since you don't read a lot of other accounts, Robert, I'm going to expand this question a little bit. Some people, when they give their life review account, they spend a lot of time describing the travels in the cosmic realms instead of the life review. Some people have a very short life review in other realms. So it's interesting that yours seem to be predominantly the life review. How long did it seem to take for you?
Where I was, there's no concept of time. Time doesn't matter. All that matters is truth. Believe me, truth, it's about the truth. It's brutal sometimes. But I can't tell you if, for example, if I was deceased 45 minutes, how many minutes was with the life review and how many minutes was with the travel. There's no concept of time where I was. None. You're just surrounded just by love. It's just, it was a wonderful feeling. And I probably spend most of my time talking about my life review because it was a reckoning for me. And if I could be helpful to someone who may have had a life where they may have done some things that they're not proud of. I don't think I did anything that was really bad. I mean, I did stuff like burn rubber and speeding tickets and all the, but I put people in jail and it affected their lives. But that's just part of my, I mean, you can't relive it. All you can do is deal with it. And if it starts from this point on, if I've made an impact on somebody, just by what I believe I saw, in fact, I know I saw it, and so be it. But there's no concept of time. It was a wonderful, it's a wonderful environment. Am I looking forward to it again? Death is part of the life process, so it's going to happen. I hope I live a lot longer than, and I'm able to just continue to live and maybe help people and help, for example, Spiritual Awakenings International grow. That's my passion right now. This is my last gig. I've accepted that as a challenge. And so thanks for the question.
All right. And the questions are still rolling in. So this is
Good.
an interesting one. I've got Kathleen and she's asking, and this is an interesting perception. Did anyone you met in your NDE report on their afterlife, or was it all about your current life?
I'd have to say it was all about me.
And this is a good time to say that there's nothing wrong with that answer because it is your life review. Okay, we got Linda. And she's just making a comment that they had a thunderstorm and lost power for an hour, was disconnected. Will Robert's meeting be recorded? And can she hear what she missed? Yes, it will all be recorded and it should be available within a week under the events tab of the website. And, oh, okay, I guess we did catch up. So I'm doing a last call for questions.
If you have a question, type it into the chat part of the screen. I noticed somebody has their hand up. You have to press the chat button and type your question in there.
While we're waiting, I was just going to comment on having a thunderstorm since I live in Central Texas. Aren't you lucky? We've been over 100 degrees for 15 days now.
Wow.
A little bit of rain would be nice.
I think I'm going to take the time just to tell everybody how grateful I am for them to attend this event. Thank you. I'm honored to be able to speak to you. And if there's any other questions you may have, just put them in writing and send them on to Spiritual Awakenings International, and we'll get them addressed. And it really is. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, Emma does have a question that does help us kind of close this out. And that is, do you have a sense of being sent back to life in order to do something in particular? And I think you kind of just alluded to it.
I think what I would like to say about that is it all evolves around trying to do good. And I kind of let things evolve the way I feel they're meant to. I don't know how I got where I am in life. I don't know, because I don't know how I got here, but I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the people that I've linked with, whether it's been through IONS, because I never would have met Dr. Cason or Linda Truax or Nicole Gruhl or Diane Willis if it hadn't been for that. And I never would have experienced Spiritual Awakenings International if it hadn't been just the feeling to take the risk and to put it all out there. And it's a good feeling. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I know that.
I think that's a great, you'd get a big round of applause from all of us to confirm what you just said is true. We do have a number of comments of folks saying, thank you for offering these videos for free, these recordings. Being grateful for our caring efforts to connect and offer help, especially during these troubling times, and that the information is resonating with our audience. Linda, you did send in a comment, and I'm going to defer yours to an email reply instead of this audience at this time. So, Yvonne, I think we're ready.
All right, so
How
we're
much
not
time
going
do we
to
have?
deal with Linda Sardi's question.
I thought that might be best to handle by email. It's up to you.
I think we could discuss it.
All right. All right, here's Linda's question. Will God forgive any serious crime that someone may have committed on earth?
Well, I hope so. I believe so. But I think you have to ask for forgiveness. That's my own opinion. And that's the best I can answer that. I may expand on that in an email response, but that's being short and blunt. But I may expand an email about that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Robert. Oh,
Yep, sorry about that.
I think we've answered all the questions, haven't we?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Robert, for an absolutely wonderful, heartfelt sharing of your story. I know everybody here really felt your sincerity and how deeply transformative your experiences were for you. So thank you for your sharing today. And thank you, Emma Bragdon, for co-sponsoring this event with IMHU. Very, very much appreciated. So everyone here, we remind you that we will be doing a Spiritual Awakenings International Presents event the third Saturday of every month. So keep checking our website to see what events are coming up. Our next presenter is going to be on September 19th, and that's Diane Willis from Chicago IANDS. We'll be talking about a guided life, how NDEs and SDEs have changed her life. And then on October 17th, we're going to have Nicole Gruel from Australia is going to be talking about her transformative journey with SDEs and NDEs. And if any of you who are here would actually like to be a speaker at one of our future events, please send us an email and let us know. And don't forget to tell your friends about Spiritual Awakenings International so that they will find out about us too and be able to join us in some of our future events. So with all of that, from all of us here at Spiritual Awakenings International, I'd like to say goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, arrivederci, and ciao. Bye, everyone. Till next time.